I was born in South Africa during apartheid, and my parents are actually from Mumbai, India.
Yeah.
They were technically not allowed to go to South Africa because their passport said this passport was valid for any country in the world except South Africa because India was boycotting and sanctioning South Africa at that time. Um, I remember like Gandhiji's granddaughter used to send us Indian vegetables from Durban, like dudi and karela and bindi. Like he used to send us like Indian vegetables, and yeah, at that time we were like one of the very few, very, very, very few Indians from India who ended up in South Africa.
Hello and welcome to the Indian Diaspora Podcast. Today we have a very talented and special guest with us, Kaneez Surka. She is a comedian, a producer, and an actor from India. She's an adventurous soul, having lived across three countries. Born and raised in South Africa, moved to India, built her career there, and then continuing her adventure, and now in New York City for the last 2 years. I want to live a life like her. So, Kaneez, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Rahul. I'm really happy to be here.
Are you a New Yorker by now?
Oh, fully. I'm a full New Yorker. Like
That's
yesterday,
amazing.
I was walking on the street and some tourists stopped in the middle of the street to check their map, and I got so irritated. I was like, "Wow, that's so New Yorker of me."
And what about the rats? Have you got used to them? Because
The what? Sorry?
the rats in the New York City, right?
Oh
They are
yeah, this is their home too. I have no issues with them. We can all live peacefully together.
lovely. Well, let's begin your journey from South Africa. So you are
Okay.
from the Indian diaspora in South Africa. Talk to
Yes.
us about that. Where were you born? Talk to us about your life in
Mm.
South
So here's the thing, like we were born, when I say my family, but I was born in South Africa during apartheid, and my parents are actually from Mumbai, India.
Africa.
They were technically not allowed to go to South Africa because their passport said this passport was valid for any country in the world except South Africa because India was boycotting and sanctioning South Africa at that time. But my dad got a job in one of the homelands in South Africa. So in South Africa, they tried to do this thing where they try to put all the black people into like 10 homelands and said, you go live there. We'll live in the rest of the country as white people, but you guys go live in these homelands and like do your own thing essentially.
Hmm.
Um, and so my dad got a job. He's an ophthalmologist, an eye surgeon, and he got a job in one of the homelands. And so technically, it was in South Africa. It was like there was some technical stuff around it, but my dad ended up moving to Umtata, Transkei, which is one of the homelands, which is the biggest homeland and where a lot of the South African freedom fighters came from. And my dad moved there in 81. Um, and it was interesting because there were a lot of Indians in South Africa already from generations before. There weren't any Indians coming in at that time again because of the sanctioning and the boycotting of South Africa. So we were like, from what my parents tell me, like all the Indians in South Africa were also curious about these Indians from India who managed to get into South Africa. Um, I remember like Gandhiji's granddaughter used to send us Indian vegetables from Durban, and like dudi and karela and bindi. Like he used to send us like Indian vegetables, and yeah, at that time we were like one of the very few, very, very, very few Indians from India who ended up in South Africa during that period. So that was very fascinating because it's when you think about South African Indians, I don't even really technically belong to that subculture.
Hmm.
It's another, yeah, it's another, like we came in the 80s when no Indians were coming during that time.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
very, very, very few. Yeah.
It always fascinates me the diaspora in our travel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One would assume that you might have been from the previous generation, but in the 80s, traveling to South Africa and
And
establishing a practice there,
yeah.
father, that is fascinating.
Yeah,
Now,
it wasn't done. So yeah, it was interesting.
but you were born in South Africa, right? So
I was
you are
born, yeah. My dad moved 81. My brothers were born in Bombay, and then I was born in Umtata in South Africa.
okay. Okay. Excellent.
in
Excellent. You
83.
almost remind me of Trevor Noah, his book,
Yeah,
Born Crime, I believe, right? He talks about being
yeah.
born in apartheid South Africa. In
Mm,
fact, how was that experience in your early childhood in that apartheid South Africa? Did you
yeah.
feel any challenges that Trevor Noah talks about, for example?
You know, as a kid, you don't notice as much.
Okay.
And I think you're living like a child's life. When I look back now, obviously, like the first movie I ever watched was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And it was in this movie theater where only, basically we couldn't go to the white theater, the white theater. We could only go to the non-white theaters.
Hmm.
So I just remember my first movie experience was in a non-white theater, with other brown and black people. Um, but apart from that, and then the people would tease you, but like kids are already teasing kids. So like to be completely fair, like it definitely leaves a sense of something in you growing up in apartheid. But personally, I wouldn't like say I like experienced, I must have experienced racism. I remember one situation where I remember we were on our way to Cape Town and we had stopped over in the small little very Afrikaans white town, and we went into a shop and we were like, it was just like we were just buying something for the trip. And my dad finished shopping. He left the shop, and then I wanted a chocolate. And so I ran out saying, Daddy, Daddy, I want this chocolate. Please can we get this chocolate? And I remember these two really big um, policemen who were standing by the door, like stopped me. I was like 6 years old and pushed me back into the shop. And they were like, you cannot. And I remember my dad getting so upset with me for like, and I wasn't stealing. I was just like coming out to be like, I want this before he left.
Hmm.
And I just remember that like moment being like, that was a bigger moment where I was like, that was a that was not necessary to be treated. And I remember my dad being like, you're not the same. Like you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. They will treat you. You're different. You can't like just run out of the shop. And him like trying to then at that point teach me about how my race was different and that I would be treated differently in South Africa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's more subtle. It's not like I didn't face like ha hardcore racism, but it's there. It's always been there. And then I went to high school and you feel it. You feel it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how?
you feel it all the time.
Hmm. And you spent 21 years in South Africa, right? So how did
Yeah.
South Africa shape up your outlook in life, your comic timing, your
Oh,
humor, the way you look at world?
right. Yeah, that's why I said earlier I didn't articulate it correctly, but I just say like, when you grow up as an oppressed in an apartheid situation, it does leave something within you. It does leave a sense of mm, this sense of justice, which you really, it really bleeds into everything that I do now. Like I carry that with me. I'm not a victim. That's not what I'm saying. But your idea of justice and oppression and oppressors, like it leaves something inside you where you're like, I'm not going to let this ever happen again to other people. I'm not going to not talk about it. And I think that informs my comedy a lot. As much as I don't go into political humor, it does inform my identity. Like my comedy is a lot about identity, and that's the reason. Because your identity was told it was lesser than, or whatever it is. But yeah, so that's how it informs my. In terms of timing and style, I feel like that I found in India. I don't know if that. I mean, it was a very British style of comedy, I feel, in South Africa.
Yeah.
So,
Was that driving
I,
part?
I actually never thought about it. South Africans love their physical comedy for sure. They're
Hmm.
very animated, very physical.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one thing. And again, also, 'cause stand-up comedy didn't exist in South Africa when I was there. Just like India, it was more like one-man shows. And
Yeah.
so, good question. I need to think about that. Like, I haven't like really sat down and been like, how has that informed my comedy?
In fact, I'm wondering, Kaneez, does the world know about what is South African comedy? Yeah. I think Trevor Noah,
Yeah,
one voice. You are the second voice in the world that
right.
about what South
Uh,
African comedy is all about.
yeah, and then there's a lot of like, yeah, I find South African comedy very like everyone has political jokes.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I think that's a big part of South African identity, politics. So yeah.
But
Um,
coming back to you, right? So an ophthalmologist's daughter, right? Indian parents, right? That's where I'm
Indian
heading at.
parents. Yeah. My mom was an entrepreneur and my dad is an ophthalmologist. Yes.
There we go. And then, their daughter says, "Hey, Dad, Mom, I want to go to India and become an
Yeah.
Indian." How did that process unfold in your household?
Well, it wasn't that round. I didn't go like, I had no idea what I wanted to do. It wasn't like I knew what I wanted to do. I was at university. I was studying law and psychology and I was just doing terribly. And then I remember after my third year, I got my degree and the plan was to continue studying law, but I was like, oh my God, I really don't want to. But obviously I need to do something with my life.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, I think I'm just going to go to India for a year.
Okay.
And my parents are very excited about that. They were like, please go back to India. Like, that's great, you know? So they were very supportive about me going back to India for a year. And I was like, I'll just figure it out and then I'll come back and study law. My parents were like, go for it. And then that's when I found comedy there. And I was doing comedy in high school and I was doing drama. And when I say comedy, I was doing a lot of comedic roles in my drama plays. So everyone knew I had an affiliation towards that. So when I went to India and I found like a comedic group and then I found a TV show the week that wasn't, um, my parents, I had extremely supportive parents. So at no point were they like, they've always like, when they saw me, can I tell you a story? Sorry, I'm just
Go
talking
ahead.
so much.
Please.
Basically in high school, my mom it was my last year of high school. I was in a play. It was called Nonsense. It was actually about five nuns in New York, in New Jersey. So my life's come full circle. I didn't become a nun, but like, um, yet. No, but basically I was doing this like play that my school production, and the play was going on 2 weeks before my matric final exam. So my mom, and I was at a boarding school in South Africa. So my mom would call a boarding school and be like, can I speak to Kaneez? And she'd like call to check up if I was studying. And then they'd always be like, oh, Kaneez is in play practice. And my mom started getting really upset. And she was like, what the hell? Like she's 2 weeks away from her matric finals and she's doing play practice. Like this is not okay. And she's like, I want to speak to the principal. And my dad's like, listen, my dad's always been like, we cannot tell Kaneez what to do. Smart man. And she'll just fight back. She'll just retaliate. So we had to do it very subtly. I love how my dad knows that about me. Um, anyway, so I ended up. So my parents came down for the play because it was a reasonably big production, and I ended up doing the play, and it was one of my best, one of the most magical moments in my life where it was in that moment, I was fully in my element and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be on stage.
Hmm.
And I was singing the song and I just sang just full open heart, like just singing the song. And I got a standing ovation in the middle of the show. And at the end of the play, I remember my mom and dad were next to me and everyone was coming up to me. And my mom like said to me, no A is going to make me more proud than I am tonight.
Wow.
And I was like, all right. And that's when they also saw it in me and they recognized it in me. And they were like, oh, this is where she's going to shine. So when I brought it up that I'm doing comedy, they were like, yeah, that makes sense.
Wow. I
Yeah,
love that
I
story.
know.
Your parents are so cool.
Touch
Yeah.
wood. I'm so privileged to have such supportive parents. Like I know people don't have supportive parents, and then that's another thing an obstacle you have to overcome. And I didn't have to overcome that obstacle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And B, right? Every artist has that moment where they are
Yes.
on the stage, right? And that's when they realize that it's their destiny, it's their calling.
Kind
And
of, yeah. I mean, yeah, it sounds very dramatic, but it's very true. Like I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do.
lovely, lovely.
Yeah.
And so you moved to India,
Yes.
and was that your first move back then, or you had been to India many times?
We'd been on holiday. We'd been to India many times as a family. My parents kept taking us back every 2 years. So I was very familiar with Bombay and I had like few family friends there.
Right.
So Bombay it wasn't like a jarring experience at all.
Hmm. Hmm. In fact, I want to go to that first trip, right? So, you were born in South Africa.
Yeah.
You're nurtured in that culture.
Yeah.
I'm sure in Indian communities, and of course, parents from Mumbai. But when you first come to India, right? How do you unfold that experience of sights and sounds and smells of India as you land there in Bombay?
Like, the first time or like when I moved there?
The first time, if you can remember
Oh,
that experience.
I just remember it. I just remember that smell that in the at the airport. That, and I remember Shantaram described that smell in the book. In his book, Gregory described it as the best, worst smell in the world, and it doesn't. It's not there anymore. That
Yeah,
smell doesn't exist anymore. But that I think any NRI or
yeah,
anyone coming up from India, especially NRIs, because we weren't used to the smell at all.
yeah.
So it was so distinct for us. But that smell of like muggy, I can't even describe it. It was like a moist, muggy, musky smell. And immediately you were like, oh, I'm in Bombay. There was like from the plane, the second you stepped off that plane, there was no transition period. It was just you're in India. Um,
Fascinating. It's the smell of the motherland, right? It's the fragrance of
yeah,
the
but then
motherland.
it's not there anymore.
It's not.
Now, no, with the airport, when the airport upgraded, that smell went.
Okay. Ouch.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, boo. We missed that smell.
Let's go to that Kaneez as she's finding her foot in India.
Hmm.
And India is a
Yeah,
layered, complicated society, right? You have social norms. You got to understand. You got
yeah,
the different
of
groups
course.
that you got to be part of, etc. How did you navigate your first 2, 3 years in India to find your foot into your career of choice?
Yeah. Um, so luckily I honestly, to be completely honest, I remember being very depressed for like 6 months. I remember like going there, and I remember just sitting at home watching Full House, eating Ferrero Rochers like almost every night. I just remember being depressed. Like now that I know what depression is, that was depression. Um, I was trying to meet, so I had some family friends and their children who I was friends with, and I would try to meet them, but I remember just feeling like I don't know how much I can reach out, how much I'm bothering other people. Um, and so I remember like my first 6 to 8 months, it was like, yeah, it was depressing. Um, but then I kind of like started like, I think, and this is what I always do, and this is just me but I always start with building relationships and friendships. That's like that's the first thing I do when I move to a new country, which is now I can say that because I've moved to new countries. But I focus on building friendships and relationships in the city. I truly believe like building my community first. And it's not like I recognize that. I mean, I just did that naturally when I was in India. But now when I look back, I'm like, oh, that's really important to me, building my community and like finding my people. And that's what I do first. Like I focus on that first. So I think in the first 2 years, I kind of like were building relationships and friendships. And then through that, I heard about an improv course and I did that improv course. And I feel like it really like you really move forward in life when you build relationships. Like you'll move so much further than like you just individually trying to like figure out how to climb the ladder, and move forward. Because through those relationships, all these opportunities came my way. And they were like, hey, someone was like, why don't you do this? They suggested it. I was like, oh, I should do this. And then I did that course. And then Cyrus and Kunal were there. And then they saw me. And then one thing leads to another.
Yeah,
Um, so that's how I navigate new places.
yeah,
I
and
focus on that.
I'm sure being friends with Kaneez would be such a delight. You're such a
I
positive
hope
person.
so.
You really
I hope they feel that way. And listen, this is like listen, this is not the same for everyone. Like, but for me, it does come easier to meet people, and that's because of the personality that I am. So I'm not saying like, oh, go to a new country and meet people. I know it's not easy for everybody, um, but that's something that I comes naturally to me, so I use it when I move. Yeah,
believe. So how did week that wasn't happen?
yeah, that happened because I was doing that improv course.
Okay,
And then Cyrus and Kunal came to watch it, and I did in the show on stage. It was an improv show, and there was this game called Newscasters, and then I was playing the weather woman in that show.
okay,
And I decided to describe the weather in Hindi,
all right,
and they loved it. And so they were like, "Can you come be on the show as a weather woman?"
okay,
And so, and the thing is, I was not meant to be on the show. Like I was meant to come like maybe once a month and just do the weather update once a month in my bad Hindi. But then the girl who was supposed to be on it, Jui Pandey, she I remember she had some contractual issues with Channel V at the time and she couldn't do another show. And so then they were just like, will you just be on the show as a regular cast?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's how it came about. And yeah,
Yeah.
longest running English television show in India.
It was so funny. For those who do not know, The Week That Wasn't was a
Yeah.
very, very popular show in India by Cyrus Brocha, and he was famous
Yes,
for MTV Bakra and
correct.
a lot of uh, on street comedies pranks that you see out here today. But
Yeah.
it was funny. And Kaneez, your Hindi was so cute.
Yeah, it is. It's still the same. That's why I just never learned Hindi because I was like, oh, I'm just going to use this to build my career. So I never learned the language.
So,
Um,
going back to South Africa, was there never a need of speaking Hindi? Uh,
my it's funny because my parents spoke Gujarati all the time at home to each other.
yeah,
But I think also what they tried to do was they were like trying to make sure that we assimilate to our new culture.
yeah,
And I feel like in that process, they didn't teach us the languages, which I'm not holding anyone, obviously not blaming anyone, but I think in that process, like we were just trying to, my dad was big on we need to like learn to assimilate to this culture and fit into this culture in order to succeed and be successful here. So I think in that process, we didn't learn the language. And also maybe I'm not very quick in learning languages. So I didn't pick it up, but my parents spoke Gujarati to each other every day. So I'm like surprised that I didn't pick up some Gujarati. Anyway, that's,
lovely.
I don't have an explanation for that.
So from Week That Wasn't,
Yeah.
talk to us about your next steps in comedy.
So then I was doing the week it wasn't. And then I remember in 2012, uh, yeah, 2012, um, so we were doing the week that wasn't, but also in 2009, 8 and 9, Veer Das started doing some stand-up shows. And then we started doing open mics. But I was not doing stand-up. I was doing improv comedy. And then in 2009, I did a course with Adam Dow from Seattle. And so we were doing improv comedy. So then these open mics would be us doing 15 minutes of improv comedy and then three or four stand-up comedians doing like stand-up. And that's what we were doing in the beginning, little. And then in 2012, I remember Star World, which is a big channel in India, they bought the rights to Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Okay.
And they wanted to make an Indian version of it, but in English. And so they did this grueling, called everyone who was doing, anyone who was doing any kinds of comedy around India, and they did this really long, grueling audition process. Like where they cut it from like 50 to 30 to 20 to 50, like they just kept cutting it and cutting it again. And eventually it ended up being Veer Das, myself, Tanmay Bhatt, this other guy named Dhruv, Abish, and Ashur Mushran as the rotating cast. And Russell Peter was the Drew Carey. He was conducting the whole show.
Okay.
And we shot the pilot and they took it to a test audience. And the test audience was like, why would we watch this when we can watch the real? And so it never got made. It was a complete dud. But it was a turning point in comedy in India where we were like, oh,
Yeah.
people want to put people there might be money in this. Like now people like because at first we were just being silly on stage. We were just being on Twitter, like we were just being silly. This was like a fun time. We were all kids at that point. And then this was like a turning point where we were like, oh, people are like starting to invest in comedy.
Hmm.
And I think that I feel like that was a turning point in the Indian comedy scene where we were like, okay, let's put a little bit of, and then yeah, um, and I think yeah, that's when it kind of shifted into starting to become an industry.
Yeah, well reflected. And India was changing. India is changing.
Yeah,
But we're
yeah,
certainly going through a transition of people like Tanmay Bhatt, uh, you coming on the stage and really talking about what needed to be talked about.
yes, yes,
A lot of youth all across India, not only Bombay, but in tier two cities, who were
yeah,
connecting with your style of humor, your stories,
yeah,
and your
and like
commentary in the society. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um, So yeah, it was a really fun time in India building building the comedy scene and industry. It was a really fun time. And we had fun doing it. We had no one took this seriously. No one was like, we need to go out there and be commentary and like we need to say what needs to be said. No, it was not coming from that place. We were all just figuring it out, kids figuring it out and making things that we thought were fun and having fun really.
Hmm. So, the adventurous soul that Kaneez is, right? 17 years in Mumbai
Yeah.
makes it successful. Everybody knows her work. How does the idea of moving to New York come for Kaneez now?
I think I'll be completely honest. In India, in the beginning of my career, I did get a lot of backlash for my accent. And which generally yeah, so people didn't know I was South African in India. And a lot of people thought I was putting on this very Western aesthetic to come across as better than them, which is what a lot of people in India did. We call it the colonial hangover,
Yeah.
where you try to like be British or American to come across as better than the
Yeah.
Indians. And listen, it's a real thing. People do that. A lot of NRIs think they're better than Indians. Um, we grew up thinking we were better like that we were better than the Indians in India because we were more westernized, and it's all deep rooted, all rooted in that the racism and the colonialism that we all faced and grew up with. Um, and so a lot of people thought I was being that person. And so I got a lot of backlash and I felt like I spent a lot of my career and then eventually it became like it was perceived like it was from my side that I felt it. I don't think I was getting it from everyone eventually, but I did feel like I I had to do a lot of self-deprecating humor to get the audience on my side up top. I don't think towards the end that was the case, but I think like as I was becoming bigger in India, and so I felt like that was always a challenge for me. And I just felt like at some point also, because I didn't speak Hindi, I was going to hit a ceiling in India. I felt like I built the audience that I was going to build in India. And beyond that, I wasn't going to build more of an audience. And so I think for me, I was like, it makes sense to go to a place where they speak English. I think my friend Biswa Kalyanrat, he's a comedian, he put it really nicely. He said in India, you are upper class, you're NRI, you're like you look a certain way, you're really good looking and you just come across as like foreign. But in America, you're gonna be ugly, you're gonna be third world, you're gonna be like lower class, they're gonna look down on you. And he's like, it's going to work for you so much better. And I was like, you're absolutely right. And it is. They look down on you here.
His humor.
Sorry?
This one right there with his
Yeah,
humor,
I know
right?
it. But he's right. He's absolutely right. So that move was like, I knew that I wanted to move. And while I obviously love what I did in India. I do
Yeah.
feel like over here I'm finding a voice that's very true to me because I'm talking about being South African and being Indian. And I felt in India, I kind of denounced being South Africa because I was like, no, I'm one of you guys. I'm one of you guys. I'm not South African. I'm not South African. I'm not South African. And over here, I'm like, no, I'm half half. I'm literally half half. Um, so yeah, it's been a really like that way. Moving to New York was something that was on my mind for a while.
Fascinating. Like
Yeah.
your ability to uproot and find new routes, and then use your experiences from the past to cross
Mm.
pollinate and
Yeah.
shape something new is very inspiring, Kenny.
I
Uh,
mean, well, you've done this. We've all done this. We've all, like all Indian diaspora, that's what we do. We uproot and we start again and we figure it out. So we're
I think
all this.
this just makes for a richer life. There's a saying: if you're not traveled, you just read one page of a book. You know,
Right. I mean,
so
listen, there's every man for himself. Like, if you want to uproot, then you uproot. But I think it's also important to stay where you are and do what you need to do there. Like, everyone has their purpose. Um, but yeah, I following my dream. And so whatever that dream is to you, follow, like that's what I did. I followed my dream and it happens that I need to uproot myself to follow my dream. But that's just my dream.
inspiring. All right,
Yeah.
let's get into New York City now. Talk to us about
Yes.
how has the studio
Yeah.
changed you, the Big Apple.
Yeah, I love it here. And it reminds me of Bombay. New York's very much like Bombay in terms of have you been to you've been to both cities?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Have you lived in both cities?
I've lived in Bombay, yes, and I lived in New
Yeah.
York, yes. So,
Don't you feel like it's the same energy?
yes,
Oh,
yes,
okay. I guess it's just me.
yes, absolutely. I would
Yeah.
say New York is a more, it's like a big brother to Bombay.
Yeah.
Maybe I have
Yes.
older Bombay in me. Bombay is much more, it's much
Softer.
more, comfortable. I'm familiar with it.
Ah, okay. Yeah, yeah.
I'm a bit, scared of New York, I must say. And I'm referring to Bronx. I'm referring to the boroughs of New York, right?
Oh,
It's hardcore. It's moved faster, and I've seen the kinder side of Mumbai. I'm talking about the July 26 floods, right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
After
yeah.
Mumbai came together for rescue, maybe I've not seen that kinder side of New York yet.
Ah,
That's
okay.
that's
No, I think New York is I hear you. I like the way you said the older brother because New York is harder. And I don't mean harder as more difficult, but everyone's harder. Like
yeah,
and
yeah,
New York and Mumbai is softer,
yeah,
100%. And there is a difference, obviously. But in terms of the energy and the pace and how
yeah.
inspiring the city is, I find them very similar.
Yeah.
I
So
love
how
I love
long it's been here? Like, talk to me. The people of New York, the Indian American
yeah.
stand-up comedy scene, the comedy scene in New York. How's that experience been for you?
It's been, I honestly, I really have been. Again, I was very depressed last year, and I think that's what happened. I just get depressed the first year I'm here, like, but I was very depressed, and it is you move like the depression comes from just being like suddenly everything starts feeling so alienating. Suddenly, I'm like, I don't know. Like I thought I was very well versed with American culture because you grew up watching all their shows. We're like we're so and like we're so bombarded with everything, music, TV, all of it. Um, so I thought I was very well versed with the culture, and then I moved here and I was like, oh, this is a very different culture to South African or Indian. Like Indian, South Africa, similar Commonwealth countries, both community oriented, cultures. And then you come here and it's a very individualistic capitalist culture. And I'm like, I actually don't know this culture at all. I don't know this at all. And so that way, like, and the food, I hate the food. Like, I don't like the way anything tastes here. But apart from that, like I said, as soon as I got here, I kind of, like I said earlier, I immediately started making headway into building my relationships within the comedy community, doing shows, and really just building friendships and relationships in comedy. Um, and I did know a couple of Indian ABCD comedians before I moved here, so they were here, and we're all still friends. Um, so yeah, that way, like I just kind of came in and
Yeah.
just started, and I really, um, yeah, I find like, of course, I know the ABCDs, and there is obviously a brown comedy scene,
Yeah.
um, but I do find that there is a difference between immigrant Indians and ABCDs.
Mm,
So even within the South Asian community, like I feel like a lot of times, and maybe I'm wrong, and I think I might be wrong but um, like I definitely am very relatable to immigrant Indians, and then white people find me fascinating, and I find like those are my two audiences, and I'm not sure if I've reached the ABCD audience yet.
mm, mm.
Um, so that's the one difference I found in terms of like the
Begin
Indian
with,
diaspora.
you're not using the term ABCD to begin with.
Yeah, don't call me an ABCD. I'm not an ABCD. I wasn't born here. American born, confused daisy. We weren't born here. We moved here. So
Exactly.
we're not ABCDs. We're very much Indians who have come here for like work or whatever else, It's
Actually, a lot of my Indian American friends, second generation, they say American born culture, they see. That's the new ABCD.
not kidding. I'm ashamed. I don't know why I'm giving but but for me also, like I'm from India and they're like, you're from South Africa. So the thing about me, which is so interesting, is that I went from being an NRI to an Indian to an NRI again. And I
Yeah,
don't know many people who have like got NRI, Indian NRI. And I'm like, sometimes I find it difficult to contextualize myself because I'm like,
yeah,
I know how the ABCDs are feeling because I grew up in a country where they made you feel ashamed of your culture. So I
right.
understand the shame that they carry within themselves.
Right.
But I also was in India where I'm so proud of like being Indian, where I'm also like, get over it, you know? So I have these two perspectives about being Indian.
Yeah. For me, you're writing the content for your book in the future, which will be a best.
I'm just going
You,
to use this
it'll be a
podcast.
beautiful story.
Thank you. Yeah, we are recording this, right? I was like, I'm going to use all this information.
Any publisher watching, sign in Kaneez before she becomes the J.K.
You
Rowling
know
of.
what? I do want to talk about this because there's not many people, very few NRIs who move back to India,
Yeah.
um, and then move out and then live there for a significant, like, for like almost 20 years and then move out again. And I'm like, oh, that's why it's confusing for me because I'm like, I am an NRI, but I'm
Mm.
not. And now I'm an NRI again. Right.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Indians are traveling the world. They are, as much as rooted in India, they could be in Germany, they could be in Australia, they could be in Iceland.
Traveling?
Yeah.
Rahul, we're taking over the world. We're not traveling in the
Don't
world.
say that to others.
Mo ha 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 ha. Part of one of my jokes I'm working on, where I'm like, Indians are colonizing the world so subtly. We're not doing it through war. We're not doing it through genocide. We're not doing it through ethnic cleansing. When we're doing it just by taking over tech.
And love, right? Russell Peters says eventually the world is going to be brown or
No,
beige.
exactly. Yeah.
Lovely. So Kenny I want to go back to depression, right? And
Yes.
and I think we have to talk about, right?
Sure.
Deepika Padukone, she openly talked about it, right?
Mm.
One would and one would look at you, right? I'm moved by your positivity, your outlook in life.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned you faced depression when you were in Mumbai,
Mm.
yeah, and you faced it out here when you moved to New York, and it's so natural when you uprooting your life is not easy, right?
Yeah.
And as they say in India, "Dar ke aage jeet hai," right? Beyond discomfort, there is always truth,
Magic?
magic.
Oh, I
Yeah?
say that. I say there's always magic beyond my comfort level, my comfort zones.
And
That's where
it
the
shows,
magic lies.
right? Right,
Oh,
you're
wow.
always one, right? But I'm sure this conversation is going to help somebody, right? Talk
So,
to us when a happy person like you faces depression.
yeah.
Give us tools to overcome it and move towards a more better, positive path in life.
So Rahul, yeah, so that's the thing. I would have deeper bouts of depression, but I think I've lived with a mild depression my whole life, and that's just, I, this is my own diagnosis. It's not, but I feel like I've lived with mild depression, like highly functional. So no, like it didn't affect me in any way. And then there would be bouts of a deeper depression. And then when I moved to America, anxiety decided to join the gang. And I was like, Ade, where did you come from? High anxiety, which also when untreated then becomes depression for me.
Yeah.
And again, just a disclaimer, I'm not a professional, I'm not qualified, so please like verify this with the professional. But so for me, I think yeah, just living with a mild depression, it is what it is. And I think, and I'll get to what are the tools that I found, but I think I started working out and eating better.
Mm.
I quit not completely quit drinking, but I've cut down on drinking a lot. I quit smoking. I think I just decided to like, I think all of those things really help set a very strong foundation for me being able to manage a lot of my depression. I have a therapist. I go to therapy. I've been doing that for 6 years. So I have a lot of these, I've made a lot of these like pillars, and what's the word? Not pillars, but I have a lot of these structures, like support systems in my life. I have a therapist. I have my trainer. I have a lot of support systems. I have my friends, that I go to when I'm feeling down. And I built that and I maintain them and I invest in them and I nurture those support systems. But this year, for the first time in my life, started taking antidepressants,
Hmm.
which I somehow, and I've been a mental health advocate for a long time, but somehow I also felt I also had like this thing against taking medication.
Hmm.
I was just like, no, 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 no. I can figure this out with eating well. I can figure this out with working out and meditation. And I did all of that. And I was still like, I still need a little more help. So I was very happy that I built the foundation. And I really like, I would really like push people to like make lifestyle changes. Because now the medication is just like, it's doing so well for me because I already have such a strong foundation of lifestyle changes that I've made. And the medication's working really well for me. And I feel like if you should really speak to your specialist about antidepressants. And I also felt very like I didn't want to take it because I was like, no, I can figure this out on my own. I can figure this out on my own. There's like so much taboo around taking medication. And still even today I keep saying, yeah, but eventually I'll get off it. Eventually I'll get off of it because I'm still like, no, I don't, I feel weak, a little bit weak taking them. I feel like I wasn't strong enough to figure it out, but it's made a world of a difference. Um, and that's when I realized I was been living with a mild depression because after taking these medication, I was like, oh, I just feel normal every day. I don't remember feeling this in the last like 20 years almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Can you?
again,
Uh,
please like speak to professionals. This is just my experience that I'm sharing. Um, but yeah,
Thank you for sharing your experience. I'm sure it's
absolutely.
going to help some soul somewhere in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Look after yourself. Take care of yourself, be good to your body and be good to your mind and then get it the help it needs.
Yeah. And
Little,
you know what, Denise?
little baby.
Besides your humor, we also love your authenticity. You appear
Oh,
like a very, very authentic person.
oh,
Who
thank
just
you.
says things as they are. And that's what we love about you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rahul. That's very, I mean, yeah, I like being this way. It's
Beautiful.
easier.
All right. So we'll move to comedy, right?
Hmm.
Speaking about saying things as they are, which in the Indian comedy scene may be difficult, right? So my question is, how would you define Indian humor?
I think Indian humor, I think what Indians, from what I've seen, and also what I do in America, which a lot of Americans don't do,
Mhm.
I think Indians like stories. I think they really enjoy um they love humor, but I think what I love about Indian comedy is that it's not just laugh, 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 punchline, punchline, set up, punchline, set up, punchline. I think people enjoy like they enjoy experiencing different emotions in a comedy show. Of course, the overriding emotion is, comedy and you're laughing and you're having fun and you're enjoying it. But I think Indians really enjoy a little bit more emotion. Um, they like which you see in Bollywood movies as well, I think that's the style of Indian comedy as well. And I love that about Indian comedy. I feel like Indian comedy is, yes, more heartfelt and we can go into spaces that feel more real and we don't just have to touch the surface level of things. We can like really get into the meat of our experiences and our observations and our feelings. And because the Indian audience allows you to do that, they like to see you feel different emotions and they like to experience um, more than one emotion, which is just laughter, Um, so I love that about Indian comedy. It works so well with me as a person. Um,
Very interesting. I never thought it that way. The land of Mahabharata and Ramayana, which are
yeah,
stories with emotions.
exactly. With everything, right? We have like, and even Bollywood movies, they always had like a little bit of everything. It wasn't like a comedy movie or a romantic movie. Like it was everything in one. And
Full-on
I feel, sorry,
full-on package, right? That's what a Bollywood movie is. It's
and I
amazing.
feel like Indian comedy is like that a little bit. But obviously,
Yeah,
you have to make the audience laugh.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's not comedy. But I love that you can throw in different emotions,
yeah.
little here and there.
Having said that and having reflected on that, how do you define American humor?
I think I'll speak about New York humor a lot because I think that's even more specific. And I do feel like it is very set up punchline. So it's like, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. They love their economy of words. They love making everything quick, snappy, quippy, witty. Everything's very quick because like even when I went to the UK, I remember and again this is the influence of South Africa. I would do my act outs because I'm very animated on stage and I do a lot of like physical comedy. And in the UK, they loved my physical comedy. Like I remember, like I would just keep it going, and they were thoroughly enjoying it. And I remember I told you earlier, South Africa, like they love their physical comedy, which is because they're very influenced by the British like
Right.
style of comedy, not dry but physical. Um, and so even like in the UK, they love my physical comedy, but in New York, they I can't do my act outs for too long. Like I can do my act outs and then I need to get into words again. So I feel like in
Okay.
America, they really love their words. In
Interesting.
the UK, they were really enjoying the act outs. And in India, like they really enjoy the stories. And I feel like I do all three of them in my comedy.
Fascinating. And have you
Yeah.
performed in, let's say, LA or other cities in US
Yes, I
recently?
have. I have performed in LA. I feel like it's difficult to say because apart from the Europe, I feel like all my audiences anywhere in the world I've gone, they've been very similar audiences, and that's immigrant Indians who have grown up watching me on YouTube and stuff. So it's difficult to gauge because right now my audiences are the same, so I can't
Mm,
tell
yeah,
um,
yeah.
right now. But when I grow bigger, I'll let you know.
Of course. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
Maybe you'll uproot and be in LA or somewhere else, and who knows?
yeah,
You're gonna
maybe.
keep on growing, that is for sure. Um,
Inshallah.
Kenny is let's move on to understanding Netflix, right? Actually,
Mm.
rather your role as a producer, right? So there was Ladies Up. There was, I think, Comic Stand and Amazon Prime.
Yes.
So your identity is that of a comedian, right?
Mhm.
Before producer, actually, I want to know your identity as an actor. Talk to us about the shows you have acted in, and also
Yeah.
your work as a producer. How was
Hmm.
that experience? So let's break it down: actor and then producer.
So here's the thing. Acting actually, like, I actually started comedy with improv comedy. I didn't start with stand up. I started with improv comedy and I love improv comedy. I always describe improv as my love marriage and
Mm,
stand up as my arranged marriage, but I'm happy in both marriages.
yeah,
So they're both equally very fulfilling. Um, but in like improv, yeah, so from improv, I kind of then started doing sketches on YouTube and acting in a lot of sketches. And I think I developed, and also when I was in high school, when I did that play, like acting, I didn't know I could do stand up because South Africa and India, stand up didn't exist. So for me, it was always like my dream was to be a comedic actor.
mm,
That was the goal. That's what I want to do with comedy is become a comedic actor. And I want
mm,
to fulfill that even more now, even more so now that I'm in America, because again, in India, because of the language barrier, there were very few things I could do.
mm.
So that's the next thing I want to do in America is, uh, really like go out and like pursue that acting dream. But I did a lot of sketches. I did short films in India. And I definitely have it in me and from my improv training, that acting, what is that word? It's in me.
Is that the skill? You know, in
Yeah.
India, which is acting ka keeda, right? Which
Yeah,
is
exactly. So there
yeah,
you go. So it's in me. I want to do it. I 100% want to do it. I've just
yeah,
been focusing on stand up, like, so that I just don't become a variety show.
yeah.
Um, And so that's as much. So yeah, so if anyone in here is watching and needs an actor for anything in America, and then in terms of producing, I didn't produce Comic Con. I produced Ladies Up because it was my stand-up. It was my stand-up special. So I
Mm,
produced just my 15 minutes, but I did produce two improv shows on Amazon Prime Video, Something from Nothing and Improv All Stars Games Night. So I created and produced these two shows that two India's first improv shows, and I produced those two, and so um, yeah, I think like producer like that an opportunity that came our way when the streaming platforms came to India, and they were like, we want to make comedy content, and that's so a lot of us put on our producer hat and started creating and formulating and designing um, and conceptualizing these comedy format shows.
got it.
Um, so that's
Excellent.
something, yeah. And I love conceptualizing shows and I love like looking at comedy. I think there's so much you could do with comedy. It's not just
Yeah,
improv. It's not just stand up. There's just so much you can do with comedy. And I really love and enjoy building and conceptualizing
um,
shows around comedy.
the multi-talented Kaneez here,
Yeah.
Hollywood or the diaspora watching
Yeah.
here, reach out to Kaneez's talent. Anything they
Thank you. Thank you.
I would love to. I'm going to pay top dollar to watch your movie on
Oh,
screen.
thank you. Yeah. And the nice thing, Rahul, is that nowadays we all have agency, by the way. I just want to remind people.
Okay.
We have the internet. We
Mm,
can make our own careers.
love it.
It's the gate. We don't need the gatekeepers as much
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
Like you can figure it out. If you play the algorithm game, you play the social media game, you
yeah.
can make it. You don't need some big Bollywood, Hollywood or Bollywood director to be like, you got the good kid. You don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
You have all the power to make yourself now. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Please.
So,
Continue.
Kenny, I'm going to go towards your journey in life, right? So,
Yeah.
imagine, you keep on growing and your body of work, right? How would you want to be remembered? Let's say when you turn 60 or
Mhm.
70 or 80, and you look back, right? How would
When
you
I
want to be
die.
remembered?
Um, I want people to remember me as when they go to my show, they feel warm, welcomed, nurtured. They feel like they've come to their Masi's house. They feel like they're safe and there's a warmth, and that's I want to in anything that I make, I want to create that warmth and that nurturing and that sense of belonging and community, and you are amongst your people. And that's kind of what I want. Like, yeah, if people are like, oh, we went to Kaneez's show, that's yeah, she's very funny, but she also made us feel very like
Yeah, yeah.
that's what I want to create.
That's so beautiful, right? No doubt you build great relationships, right? Because that's what comes naturally to you, that warmth and comfort and bonding that, you
Yeah,
tend to build with around you. I love
yeah.
that. Now let's
It's
understand
my
Kenny's this way, right? So we are the diaspora show, right? So imagine you were a formula 0 to 10. Divide that into South Africa, India, and now USA. What
yeah.
out of 10, what percentage is South Africa, India, and USA?
So well, I didn't. You cut a little bit in the beginning.
Imagine Kenny's is, a formula 0 to
Oh,
10 or 0 to 100, right? What percentage is Kenny's South African?
hmm
What percentage is Kenny's Indian? And what percentage is Kenny's now American?
yeah. I wouldn't even say American, but yeah. Um, integrated. What percentage is integrate? I like. I mean, I'm not American, and also in New York, like it's a melting pot. It's really not
Yeah.
America. I would say I am 20%. No, this is random numbers. I'm like, now I'm doing math. Um, 20% South African,
Hmm.
40% Indian, and 40% this person that I am now,
Hmm.
which is not American, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's this integrated person
sure,
where I'm
sure.
both South African and Indian.
I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Where I was trying to get to that question is the point of identity is a
I
very
know.
interesting and difficult point to understand, right? Um,
It's it's
who
very
are you?
difficult.
Are you South African? Are you a Mumbaiker, right? Are you an Indian? We get asked those questions, and it's amazing how we change through life, but
Yeah,
also how we reflect ourselves on our identity. You know? It's a, but I love that you're 20% South African, so it stays with you.
yeah.
But I was assuming you would say 60% or 40%, but no, it seems
Oh,
it has grown on you.
yeah. India is way more part of my identity than South African, for
Yeah,
sure, for sure. Oh, 100%. But yeah, this identity question is so fascinating because when you come from so many different countries and when you belong to like no religion, you don't belong to any country, you don't belong to any one group of people, then you're living this very pluralistic life. And like,
yeah,
and by the way, which is why I'm taping my stand-up special at the end of this month in October on my 41st birthday, and my
yeah.
stand-up special is called I Found My People, and it
Hmm.
explores just this. It explores as a woman who comes from different countries,
Yeah,
who comes from different who doesn't have one religion, one she doesn't as a woman who doesn't have her own family, her nuclear family. I'm not married. I don't have
yeah,
children.
yeah.
Who then are my people? And I really explore this in this new special that I'm taping and going to be releasing on my YouTube channel. And it just yeah, because you asked this like this whole idea of identity, um, and who are my people?
Yeah,
Who would I fight for? Like who would I go to war for? I don't
yeah,
I don't have that kind of I don't look at the world like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We are excited to look into that much further.
absolutely.
Who are our people? Mm.
And that's my show. And I'm fully like I'm fully pushing my show right now, but it just because it makes complete sense to what you said. Like, yeah, it's called I Found My People, and check it out on YouTube and when I release it. Because
Looking,
I talk about all of the things that we've talked about in this
yeah,
podcast. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So with this, we'll move to rapid fire questions.
Yay, games! I love games.
Okay.
Okay, I'm really
All
good
right,
at games.
awesome. All right. The first question is Mumbai vada pav or New York pizza?
New York pizza.
Sacrilege.
Sorry, I knew I was gonna get that reaction.
Did you say you don't like the food here, Kaneez?
I
Anything else?
know, but like pizza is pizza. Like I love pizza. I think that was an unfair question because you said pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if you said hot dog and vada
Yeah.
pav,
Okay.
that's a
All
bit.
right.
Yeah, just change the question. Ask again. Let's start again. Okay.
All right. Okay. Mumbai vada pav or New York hot dog?
Mumbai vada pav.
There we go. All Mumbaikars
Yeah.
are happy. Like. All right. The next one. Durban, Johannesburg, or Cape Town?
Cape Town.
Why?
It's beautiful. It's just just because it's just so beautiful.
Hmm.
It's just like a very I love it because it's beautiful. That's the only reason. No other reason. It's just
Hmm.
scenically so gorgeous. It's like you go stay there and you feel like you just stayed in a really big spa. That's what it feels like, Cape Town.
Excellent.
Yeah.
One personality from the Indian diaspora in South Africa that the
hmm
world should know about.
Um. Oh, there's so many, but I would say Riyad Musa.
Hmm.
He's
Talk
a
to us more.
comedian.
Okay.
Sorry.
Talk to us more about Ria.
Oh, Riyad, he used to be a doctor and he became a comedian. And I think he's just really funny. And he did this movie called Material. I think it's on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but it's so good. It is
Hmm.
such a good movie. So yeah, check him out. Check out this show, TV show, this movie called Material. It's really good. And all Indian diaspora people should watch that. Yeah.
Love that. Your favorite restaurant in Mumbai?
I don't think it exists anymore from what I've been told, but Rajdhani. I love Gujarati thali so much. So, Takkers or um, there's another one that I went to in a video that I did, but I've only I forget the name, my bad.
Yeah.
But I used to love Rajdhani.
Okay. All right. Cool. Next, a place in India that the world should travel to.
I always tell people to go to Rajasthan. Wow, there's a theme going on. Rajasthan. I think Rajasthan is just so beautiful. I really do. So if you ever want to go, I would always tell people go to Rajasthan or Kerala. I think
All right.
Kerala is also just so beautiful.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, a Masi that you love. We want her name.
Rashida Masi, my Masi. The only reason I became like this Masi personality is because my Masi is, I want everyone to love me the way I love my Masi.
We love that. All the
Yeah.
Masis watching out there.
Oh, you guys are the best. Oh, no one loves you like your Masi. It's just, Masi's are the best.
That's the Indian family. That's the Indian
Yeah.
diaspora, right? Our family, our bonds, always remain.
No, no, this is not the same for Chachis and Buas, huh? There's only Masis.
All right. Okay. Love it.
Uh,
Now, your favorite comedian in the world.
oh my God. Me? No, I'm kidding. Okay. Um, favorite, the most, that's difficult to say, like the most favorite comedian. I really enjoy, there's one comedian who I thoroughly enjoy, and his name is Rory Scovel. And
Okay.
he's a comedian, he's an American comedian, white male, American kid, but he does so much improv in his stand-up. And for me, I'm like, that's what I want to end up doing.
Hmm.
He'll like literally just start doing an improv scene in the middle of his, like, I'm like, wow, wow.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so for me, that's
Right.
my favorite
Next,
comedian right now.
and rising stand-up comedian in India
Mm.
that the world should know about.
I feel like I don't know any other rising stars right now because I haven't been in India for so long.
Yeah,
So I don't know who's like really like making marks. But I would say like honestly, if you watch Comic Stan
yeah.
on Amazon Prime, genuinely like you'll see the best of what Indian comedy has to offer. And I would really recommend you follow all the contestants on, especially if you've watched the first season, the last season. Like I know a lot of them are blowing up big time now, which is really exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now,
So
the final question: the best place in the world to do improv?
for me,
Hmm.
Mumbai.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yes.
All the
For me,
Mumbaickers are watching there. She didn't choose New York City. She didn't choose London. It's Mumbai.
Mumbai. For me, yeah. Like I enjoy doing improv there.
Awesome. Kaneez, this was such a fun, wholesome, authentic discussion.
Thank you. I'm sorry I talked so much. I didn't ask anything about you.
No, not
Which
needed.
is
We,
okay.
we loved hearing from you. In fact, I want to close on this note, right?
Mm,
You have seen the world. You come from the diaspora. Uh, if there is any message you want to give to the Indian diaspora from
yeah.
Australia to Africa to Europe and America, what would you want to say?
I think the biggest thing is like, don't try to hide your Indianness. Don't feel ashamed of it. And I know like everyone listening to this be like, I'm not ashamed, but like, sometimes we feel that way because we face racism and then we feel bad about who we are. And I was like, really just double down on being
Hmm.
Indian. Like, it's like, it's just, it's cool right now as well. And just really don't pander to anybody. Don't over explain yourself. Like, people will get you. You don't have to over explain your culture.
Wow,
Like, let people Google. We all did that. We did that for the West. They can do that for us. And I'm not coming from a place of defensiveness. I'm just saying like, we don't have to over explain and come from a place of feeling ashamed.
and they can pronounce your name.
Yeah,
What
they can do that. They can do all of it. So yeah, don't like, yeah,
love
don't,
that.
don't, don't dilute yourself.
Love that. Kaneez,
Yeah.
such an awesome podcast. Thank you for sharing your
Thank
energy with
you.
us. You're gonna shape some lives out there from the diaspora. So thank
Oh
you.
no, I don't know about that, but I think they're gonna stop listening after 2 minutes. They're gonna be like, yeah, ye kya hai, ye ladki kaun hai?
All right, everybody.
uh,
Thank you for joining us
Thank you
today.
so much for having me, Rahul.